Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of PowerCore Productions and Broadcastings. I'm your host, Ron Harrington, back to do another video. And today, we're going to be continuing our Darling in the Franxx Lion-Hearted series. The crossover between Darling in the Franxx and Voltron Legendary Defender, Part 3. As always, before we get into today's video, I want to say thank you to everyone who supports PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, because I can't do it without you. You make the channel grow, you make the core grow. Also, if you haven't, please check out our other uploads from the previous parts of the week, that including What If Deku was the son of Rock Lee, My Hero Academia Fighting Spirit, What If Naruto was the Avatar Naruto Rebirth Shippuden, and finally, the Season 1 finale of What If Issei was the Shield Hero High School DxD Devil of the Shield. But anyway, getting into today's video, I do also want to announce that I am going to be planning something really special for this weekend. I don't know if a lot of you guys are into rom-coms or things of that nature, or those sort of type of fanfics. But, you know, Valentine's Day is almost in the air, so for those of you who like the romance side of anime and things of that nature, I have something especially planned for Sunday, so stay tuned for that. And also stay tuned for PowerCore Booking. That is the series where I will be doing fantasy bookings and what ifs in the world of professional wrestling, so stay tuned for that series coming out as well. But anyway, without further ado, we're going to get into today's video. So as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Following their successful mission with Plantation 26, Squad 13 was given a special reward. It would be a vacation, a few days they would get to spend at one of the last few beacons on Earth, a small beachside area, a place where they could relax and unwind. This allowed Squad 13 to get a lot closer. The children finally enjoying some time to be free and to relax, no longer with the worries of fighting Klaxosaurs. Among playing on the sandy shores and enjoying good food, among the group, there were many discussions that were had. But for the most part, things stayed pretty relaxed and normal. One of the subjects was Hiro and his relationship with 02. Among a few of the boys, normally Zoromi, Futoshi, and even Goro, they wanted to learn more about the special connection that Hiro had with 02. What were things like kissing? What was love? These concepts they had never known before. Hiro himself couldn't describe it, but the best way they could was a form of admiration, a desire, the feeling to want to protect. These were feelings that they too shared with the ones whom they went into battle with. Before long, Mitsuru would discover not too far from the beach, just beyond the cliffside and through a cave, they were near what appeared to be a city that had long since been abandoned. As they made their way through, 02 would explain that humans once lived there, before they all migrated to the plantations long ago. The children even took note that some of the interior of the buildings resembled that of the home they lived in. As everyone explored, Kokoro in particular, while wandering through one of the empty homes, would come across a book that spoke of childbirth. It was something that she had never known before. The very concept of having a child had long since left this world. Many things had changed in the last 100 years, not just on Earth, but in the galaxy as a whole. It was as if everything that had once been known was now being lost to the sands of time. As she was exploring, she was almost crushed by a falling piece of debris. However, Mitsuru would come in and save her in time. For each boy, they had a special device on their wrist. It could appear to be a watch, and it worked as so, but it also worked as a way of deploying the suits that they used to pilot the Lions. It was something they carried on them at all times. The boys had taken some time to look through the watch, to look through their special device and to see what they were capable of. Aside from creating their suited armor that allowed them the ability to pilot the Lions, they were also able to deploy weapons. This had been an oversight by the adults as they were looking through the Voltron technology, but they decided to keep it to themselves since there really was no harm in it, and they never knew when they might need them. That night, the children would all sit around the fireplace on the beach, talking about how everything had changed for them. Goro, Hiro, and Ichigo would tell them of how they discovered the Lions, of how they had snuck out of Mistletoe, how they had found the great cave not too far from where they had been stationed, and that by chance they had discovered them. It seemed as though they were dormant, but this rose many questions. How was something like Voltron? Why was it hidden on Earth of all places? If they remembered the legend correctly, Voltron's origins was tied to multiple parts of the galaxy, including Earth. Of course, humans no longer interacted with other extraterrestrials, not anymore. Following the Great War with the Drool Army, it left half of the galaxy completely devastated. Many planets never recovered. Such communication was cut off. The Galactic Alliance had long since been destroyed, and planets went back to taking care of themselves individually. A state of martial law was declared amongst the stars itself, and many planets no longer had any interaction. For Earth, they were never really too keen on interacting with the other parts of the Galactic Alliance in the first place, so to cut off contact with them, well, it really wasn't that big of a deal. Eventually, they became nothing more but far-fetched tales, stuff of legend. And with the arrival of Papa, as well as those of the Council, pretty soon, those legends stopped being passed on. But all the same though, everyone was excited for the future. Hiro especially, since now he was able to be of some use and help out the team. They would also ask the girls how they felt about being able to pilot the Franxx without their assistance anymore. The girls would say that for the most part, everything remained pretty much the same. Except now they just had to be in an empty cockpit by themselves. Although they would talk about the pairing sequence. The pairing sequence was a special provision that connected the Franxx to their respective lion. This gave the sensation as if they were still piloting together, even if they were in separate entities all their own. More, they looked forward to the future, to seeing what the Lions and Voltron could do, to see where it could take them. Eventually, everyone would go to sleep that night, except for Hiro, who felt a little restless. He would get up and go for a walk, and he would run into Ichigo, the two of them enjoying a conversation as they shared each other's company on the shoreline. They looked up as the night sky was full of stars. Ichigo would tease Hiro, wondering if he had even remembered, and he was able to pick up on it rather quickly. He remembered why looking at the stars was so important for them. It was Ichigo's name, after all. Hers in particular, was named after the 15th star of Orion itself. As they looked up into the night sky, they would look at the shooting stars flying across them, each one making their own wish and hoping that it would come true. Eventually, their time of fun would come to an end, and they would return back to their duties. As they went back into combat, the boys and the girls were getting their cooperation and their abilities to work together increasing tenfold. Dr. Franxx had fervently been watching and monitoring them closely. Squad 13 was different from many other squads. They were unique. They had their own individuality. Unlike most, their emotions were seemingly always on the forefront. Under normal circumstances, this would usually be quelled, but the other higher-ups, notably their caretakers, Hachi and Nana, they couldn't help but notice that it was due to these differences that allowed them to work better, that allowed them to work closer, to be an even stronger unit than ever before. They would keep monitoring them for the most part, to see what would happen. In the meantime, Kokoro would continue to read from her book. The more she read from it, the more she began to question various things. And at the same time, there was someone that she was taking notice of. It wasn't anything major, it was just from a distance. It was Mitsuru. She wasn't sure why she was feeling this way. No one did for the most part. As time progressed for Squad 13, their feelings started to emerge. They started to grow in ways that no one could really understand. It was usually between those who were partnered. For Miku and Zoromi, they always seemed to butt heads about everything, yet their connection was stronger than ever. Hiro obviously had strong feelings for Zero too, and likewise, even Goro. One night, before their mission, he would speak to Hiro. He would tell him how, for some time, he had always noticed how he and Ichigo were with one another, and that for a while, he wasn't sure how to describe that feeling. But yet over time, he had come to realize that how he felt, if it was this love, maybe that was what he felt for her. Why he worked as hard as he did to be there for her. Hiro was absolutely shocked by this. For one, he had no idea that Ichigo had ever seen him in a bigger light than he already was. And even more so was that his best friend actually loved her. But the more he thought about it, the more it made sense. But before he could ask any questions, Goro would simply go to sleep, as Squad 13 would take on a large floating Klaxosaurus the next day. It floated high in the sky, its outside hide being rather soft and malleable, like a gelatin that sucked you in, with large tendrils that dragged across the ground. The lions would mobilize with the Franxx. One of the added benefits, and one that was of great use to the plantations, was the fact that the lions didn't need the same fuel that the Franxx did. No, the lions were powered by something different. There was a core in each of them. It needed to recharge on its own, but it was relative for the most part. Even more so, when the Franxx were able to ride on the lions, it reduced the amount of energy that they output by almost 50%. This was of great use for them. That 50% they could save every time a Franxx was operated could extend their battle life for a greater period of time. It would also help the plantations when it came to the magma energy that they cultivated from the earth itself. With that type of reduction, even just from one plantation, the amount of energy that they could have to sustain themselves could last well within the next 2 centuries itself. If they could slowly create a process like this for the other ones, then the amount of energy that they could save, the possibilities would be absolutely limitless. And so, Squad 13 became of great importance to Papa and to those of the Council. Not just them, but there was also Voltron. They had their own means for that being as well. In the middle of the fight with the Klaxosaurus, Delphinium and the Black Lion would both be swallowed in. Everything had been going fine, but it seemed as though they had been pulled into a trap. There was only enough time for one of them to escape, and without hesitation, Goro would push Delphinium out. Ichigo didn't know what was happening, and she would be knocked out from the result of their encounter. Everyone would eventually make it back to base. Inside of the Black Lion, Goro would eventually awaken as well, as he too had been knocked out from the fight. When he awoken, he wondered where he was. He would be radioed in by the others. They would explain that right now, the lion was trapped inside of the heart of the Klaxosaur, and in all likelihood he was trapped there. Goro kept a level head about it all. He tried his best to not focus on the negative, but to stay positive. At the base, the children would reconvene and try to figure out a way to save Goro. But they were shocked to see that the adults, the only thing they cared about was protecting the plantation and the magma fields. Of course, it wasn't that they didn't want to rescue Goro, but it was simply that the danger of the Klaxosaur posed to the plantation itself was just too high of a risk to weigh on the fate of one person. While they were going to give them permission to go in for the rescue and the elimination of the Klaxosaur, it was made very clear that if the Klaxosaur got too close, not only would the Franxx and the other lions be responsible to defeat it, but the plantation's own defensive systems would be put into action as well, and they would take the necessary actions to destroy it regardless. Ichigo became very irate. The idea of losing Goro like this, it was more than what she could handle. Zero Two had remained standoffish about it all. Of course, how could she not be? She had been a part of many other squads in the past. She had seen plenty of other pilots and Franxx be destroyed in the fight with the Klaxosaurs. However, she too wanted to help. As the operation was put into place, they would find an opening inside of the Klaxosaur from above. The goal was to create an opening for Delphinium to get inside with the Black Lion. Once the Black Lion was free, the two of them would leave a bomb inside of the Klaxosaur and get out as quickly as possible. As Goro waited, he wondered if maybe this was how things were going to end for him. If it was, then this wasn't going to be a bad way to go. Of course, he only wished that he could have told Ichigo how he felt. He wished that maybe he could have expressed his feelings. He even floated with the idea of self-destructing. Of course, that was for the dire of situations, but he figured he was close enough to the core. If it really came down to it, the Black Lion would have more than enough power to detonate and self-destruct. Of course, it meant that Voltron would never be able to be formed again, but maybe that was a risk he was willing to take. Although before he could even come to that decision, his comms would come back online immediately. As Ichigo would yell out towards him, using her magma blade, she would create an opening inside of the belly of the Klaxosaur, freeing the Black Lion immediately and allowing them the chance to escape in the process. Once they were free, Goro would be immensely elated. However, they didn't have time to celebrate. This Klaxosaur was a Gutenberg class, and all Gutenberg classes were to be treated with the utmost urgency. Under this situation, Voltron would be formed again, the Franxx serving as Voltron's backup as it took the forward lead. Using the blazing sword, it would slice through the Klaxosaur, creating an opening in the space itself, as the Franxx would all target the core at once, with Sterlitzia dealing the killing blow. With their teamwork, the Klaxosaur would be defeated, and the team would reconvene with each other once again. Once he was outside of his lion, Goro would go to Ichigo immediately, and the two of them would embrace in a hug. Goro was extremely tired, but he was grateful that he could see her again, and now he could do something that he knew he needed to do. He would tell her the truth. He would tell her how he felt, that he loved her. Of course, he wasn't sure how she would respond. How could anyone respond to something like that? All the same, he didn't want to live his life with any regrets anymore. There was no telling where his adventures with Voltron would take him. Maybe one day they might have to go out in space. Maybe he might not come back. Being a part of something like this, you never knew when your next battle could be your last. Something they had known all too well when they had discovered the room. The rooms that had been sealed away inside of Mistletoe. The rooms that belonged to those who were previously a part of Squad 13. The previous squad that didn't make it back. Not a single survivor. Ichigo would be taken aback by these feelings. But at the same time, she couldn't deny that she herself felt something for him. They would have a bit of an awkward moment, but it would be precious for them. One that the both of them would cherish. Papa, as well as the other sages of the council, would see to it that Squad 13 would be rewarded for their numerous victories against the Klaxosaurs. Squad 13 had been racking up an amazing kill count against them, higher than even most of the other senior squads. Their reward was that they were briefly allowed to visit the city, to walk about, to see where the adults lived, and they would be given medals. The ceremony was short and sweet. However, Zoromi was absolutely elated. This had been his dream all this time, to see where the adults lived. The prospects of growing up was something that he had always looked forward to. As they explored the city, Hiro could also see that there was something that was going on. 02 hadn't been herself lately. She had been rather moody, kind of aggressive, and standoffish. They had no way of knowing what was going on with her. Nana constantly reminding her of the various tests she would need to take. And while Hiro didn't understand much, he knew enough to know that 02 didn't like them very much. Zoromi, in the meantime, would find himself drifting far from the group in the city, getting lost and not knowing where he was going. By chance, he would meet with an older woman who would invite him into her home. She was kind and gracious, and he asked her about adult life. She would have a hard way of explaining it. After all, with the use of magma energy, human life was granted near immortality. She had been alive for so long that she couldn't remember much of anything. Zoromi would learn that she lived with her own partner, but they didn't speak anymore. When you've been alive for as long as they are, their psychology, their physiology, it all began to change. They didn't remember much of anything about the other. In fact, she couldn't even remember the last time she had heard her partner's voice. As Zoromi got a closer look at the woman, he couldn't help but shake the feeling that they had met before. but the woman would deny it. Before long, the authorities would arrive to pick up Zormi and treat him for any infections before bringing him back to the dorms with everyone else. Zormi wondered more about that woman, but before long, she would fade away in his memories. Eventually getting back into his everyday life, he would forget of their connection. As time passed, Squad 13 would be given more and more top assignments, guarding various facilities and being put on the front lines in battle. Along the way, Mitsuru's condition would slowly start to change in the process. Not only was he being affected, but also his ability to pilot the Blue Lion. This was noticed by everyone. His partner, Ikano in particular, who was the pilot for Chlorophentum. Their connection with one another was dropping rapidly, and at this rate, he would become incompatible with Inko. Who knew what that would do for him being a pilot of the Lions? Voltron had started to become a massive asset to the Earth itself. Mitsuru tried to look past this, continuing to fight through the pain. As he did so, he would start to think more and more about his past. To try to see if there was any way that they could fix the connection, Nana would propose the idea for anyone wanting to switch partners, to see if there were other compatible sorts that they could work with, to synchronize. Ikano would have one idea. She wanted to work as a stamen for another stamen, in the event that it had to be done. She would want to partner with Ichigo. They would go to using the traditional system that they used for the Franxx. 2 pilots inside of one Franxx, but 2 of them being girls. That was something that had never been done. While they did try it out, ultimately it failed, but Ikano was grateful for the help. In the meantime, Mitsuru wanted to try partnering up with another Franxx, with someone else. He wanted to partner up with Janista. Futoshi would take great adoration to this. Recently, Futoshi had been feeling the connection like everyone else had, and for him, he had grown very fond of Kokoro. He wanted to protect her, to always watch out for her, to be the lion that guarded the Franxx. As such, the 2 had even made a promise that they would always work together. But now it seemed as though Mitsuru was getting in the way of that. Futoshi made it very clear that he didn't want anything bad to happen to Kokoro. And at first, Mitsuru didn't really seem to care all that much. But Kokoro would agree to partner with him. As such, a new synchronization would be formed between that of Janista and the Blue Lion. Once the 2 of them were paired together, they would try it out in practice, and before long they would get their chance as they did battle with a Klaxosaur. Futoshi, inside of the Yellow Lion, would partner up with Chlorophentum, with Ikano. As they went into battle, Janista would have a bit of a loose connection with the Blue Lion. They weren't really in sync when they fought. Mitsuru was all over the place, always seeming to be a bit erratic. He was losing focus, and he was losing it quickly. This had started to make him become a lot more disheartened about himself, wanting to give up. Kokoro, however, would snap him out of it, trying to cheer him up as best she could, to learn what it was that made him this way. And here she would learn. She would learn that long ago, Mitsuru had made a promise with Hiro. When they were younger, still growing up, they had both promised one another that they would pilot a Franxx together. However, somewhere along that line, that promise had been broken. And it was something that he just couldn't seem to get over. All the same though, Kokoro would tell him that it didn't make him any less of a pilot. He had gone on to become amazing in his own right. And he was now piloting one of the legendary lines that formed Voltron. Not just anyone could have been capable of doing that. She would assure him that no matter what, he could handle it, and that they could work together. Regaining his control and his composure, the two would synchronize once again. They had almost been crushed by the enemy, but thankfully, they had gotten some assistance from Futoshi and Inkano. With that, they were able to work together, allowing Strelitzia and the Red Line to deliver the final strike. When the fight was over and they returned back home, Futoshi would reprimand Mitsuru for his behavior, for putting Kokoro in danger, and that if they were going to work together, then they had to be on the same page. Mitsuru would apologize. He promised he would look after and protect Kokoro in the future, and he was going to be a better pilot for the other lions, so that they could work together when they needed to. Dreams began to infiltrate their minds. For the 5 boys, the 5 pilots of Voltron, they had these weird dreams. They found themselves in a forest with no clue, no sense of direction. For each one, their dream would morph and they would find themselves in some different space. For Goro, he found himself in a dark void with no light, nowhere. He had no idea why he was in this void, what he was looking for, what he was supposed to find. For Futoshi, he found himself in something akin to a desert, something dry, devoid of life, nothing but endless sand in sight. For Zorami, he again was in a forest, but it was deep and dense. He could hardly see above the trees. There was no telling of where he was, no sense of direction. For Mitsuru, he was in the water. He found himself submerged. And for Hiro, he was in something that was scorching hot, like a volcano. He could see the magma just below him that was about to erupt. But what these dreams meant, the boys had no clue, although they tried to make sense of it. Eventually, Squad 13 would be sent back to the garden, their original home, assuming this was where they had been born and raised, before they had become pilots. They had gone there to undergo some tests, and while they were there, they would be greeted by the Nines, 02's former squad, and their leader, 9 Alpha. He was rather unique. Something about him was very similar to 02. He was also highly enamored with how 02 was doing with this new squad. Disobeying orders, Hiro would visit the old facilities where they used to live. He had hoped that he would find Naomi there. They hadn't seen each other in a while, but he hoped that she was alright. But she was nowhere to be seen, and no matter where he went, the adults refused to tell them where she was. The other children were also worried about her as well, as she was once a part of their squad. As they continued to look, they would see other children, a lot younger than them. They wondered where they were coming from. While no one wanted to admit it, there was a dark realization that was starting to form for them all. They weren't going to live to be adults. But if they weren't, Then why was that? In the meantime, more Klaxosaurs would begin to appear in the area, more so than usual. Hachi had a hunch that it could have been because of the presence of 02, but they had no way of knowing. As the squads were dispatched to deal with the Klaxosaurs, Hiro would take note that 02's horns and canines had grown bigger. For some reason during the battle, 02 would desperately ignore Hiro. She would go rogue and just continue to kill the Klaxosaurs over and over again. Among the others, muttering to herself, this was how she could become human. After their fighting, Hiro would find 02 out in the forest. As it snowed all around them, he would attempt to speak to her, to try to understand her. He too had come to have the similar feeling that Goro had for Ichigo. He truly was in love with her. However, though, 02 didn't feel the same, at least not in that present sense. Hiro tried desperately to convey his emotions to her, but she didn't want to hear it. 02, please, you don't have to do this. Being human, that's not why I care about you. I love you. You love me? 02 would approach Hiro as she unzipped her coat to expose her chest to him. This is what you love. You love the idea of me. You like the idea of having me. But you don't love me. That's not true. I do love... No. You are nothing to me but father. You will help me become human. Hiro had no idea what she meant by that. At the same time, Ichigo would eavesdrop on the conversation between Nana and Hachi to confirm of the process that was taking place. The process within 02 and Hiro was intensifying. The Sarification, as it was called. Something that could help 02 become human. But in the process, it could turn Hiro into something entirely different. Not too long after, a second wave of Klaxosaurs would attack. The squad would be sent out once again, and they would defeat them for the most part, but 02 was starting to go rogue. She started to lash out at the Klaxosaurs, to strike them mercilessly. Hiro tried to get her under control, but he had a hard time doing so as she would lash out towards him, and soon she attacked him as well. Before long, the Red Lion and Strelitzia went tumbling over a cliffside, falling deep below, into an open clearing. The others couldn't find them, but they knew they needed to hurry as a storm was coming. Out in an open field, Strelitzia's eyes, they would turn into that of a blood red, as a feral scent came from the Franxx. What's the matter with you, 02? Why are you acting like this? Shut up. You're nothing but my father. I will find my darling once again. So be of use to me and give me all of your essence. Strelitzia started to become primal, changing into its feral form. as it turned into a female lion. As the feminine red lion and the original red lion itself circled one another, something else was building inside of Hiro. This emotion, all of them, love, sadness, anger, depression, it was all starting to become too much. Their emotions were beginning to flare. It seemed as though it was burning hot, not just inside of them, but within the machines that they piloted. Steam began to pour from the two red lions as they roared out into the sky. The two would clash with one another, biting, scratching, clawing, each one jockeying for position, as the others would eventually find them. They would become absolutely horrified at what they were seeing. It looked as if the two of them were trying to tear each other apart. Deep within their own psyche, at this very moment, both Hiro and 02 would start to black out. Visions would start to appear for the both of them. What these visions meant, they were not sure. But one thing was for certain. Despite the two of them not truly knowing it, there was a past between them. A past they thought had long since been forgotten and buried. But it seemed as though this fight was bringing it to the surface. What this past held, and what it would reveal, that was something only time could tell. This concludes Darling in the Franxx, Lionhearted, Part 3. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we're going to be continuing What If Naruto Was Trained by Dr. Strange, Naruto Mystic Adventures, Part 3. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I am Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.